Alright, if you guys are new to the channel, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification icon so you know when I'm uploading streaming. We are going to be playing Dagon, or Dagon, or how you say his name. It's a game based off of one of H.P Lovecraft's games. That game's books. See if that's right. I can't remember. It's free to play on Steam. Let's find out. Horrors, come to madness. Welcome to H.P Lovecraft. Inspired by H.P Lovecraft. Okay. I thought so. It's a point-click horror game, so kind of like Slender Threads, but more kind of like if you ever played Riven, Secret to Mist, or Mist, or any of those games, kind of like that. From what I've seen from the videos, and I was like, oh, it seems interesting. So, how long is this going to take to load? All right. So there's some DLC. It's going to be sync motion blur. Get rid of the motion blur. That'd be it. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft work, focused on the story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited, progressing through locations along with the plot.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Treading in the layers, finding secret focuses your eyes and sign. Alright, what's this?
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
Wait, what?
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
They were right, the movement is limited. Alright.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids who almost developed powerful bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on 27 July 1900 before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, who will be defeated, no quarter will be given, prisoners will not be taken, whoever falls into your hands is forfeit, just as 1,000 years ago the Huns under their king Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history. And legend made the name German be confirmed by use in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adapted during the First Hague Convention of 1899. Okay, so I got to pay attention to my surroundings more before I cook a nose.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
I think they let you go. Alright. Anything else to click here? No?
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
Sure that there is no other hidden stuff.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
What the fudge? Alright.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away.
Yeah, we see that. This is gonna...
Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
sure there's no hidden stuff. Ooh.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
Well, that'd be kind of weird if that is the case.
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might.
Well, that's moving wherever that is.
Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens.
Is that coming closer to us?
As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time.
Oh, mud crab. Don't know what that is. No, that's a horseshoe crab, isn't it?
That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
It kind of looks like the one of those bugs from Space Troopers. Okay, that's a well. No comment.
That night I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
What the hell has tentacles this fucking big? Or they're like slugs of some type.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Oh, that's cool. Different angles.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again.
Yet you're not going to show us these dreams that you have, okay?
And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day.
Why is that?
Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
Okay.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world,
Yeesh.
peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
Ooh, that's kind of spooky.
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
And the moon is moving slowly.
Ledges and outcroppings of
Oh my
rock
God.
afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent.
The liquid's moving upwards, if you guys can see that. That's weird.
Whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated.
Is that a monolith?
All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Okay, the moon's there. So what's shining from over there to reflect on there? Okay.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Okay.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Yeah, alright.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm.
Hell?
And revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. Writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books.
Ooh, Trululu.
Consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness and nameless cities, journals, the character's notes, the shadow of time, the haunted of the dark, islands emerging from the ocean, the Call of Cthulhu, which is a narrative game based off of H.P Lovecraft, obviously, are fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythology. Miko in the Whisper of Darkness is also considered an origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft other stories also include in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré.
Okay.
I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint, grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Oh.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Oh, I've seen something over there for a split second. Oh.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
What? Oh.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Blades, darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. Indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
Alright, that's cool, we got picked up.
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Richie had a smartphone. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticism to heart, which resulted in his suggestion to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again for the first time since his teenage years. Dagon, published in 1917, is one of the short stories written during that period. In a sample excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree to simultaneously disarm one or more nations would adultly retain secret armaments and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is or even can be above warfare until the basic impulse of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. Well, that's sadly true.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as an ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The ruler of Akkad, Mesopotamian, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as a judge of the dead in a Assyrian poem and an underworld prison warden in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name. In Hebrew, the word Dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft works, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that reside in the ocean. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Okay. Nothing else to... Alright.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
August Derleth was an American writer and an ethologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works throughout his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work, after his death he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmetic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Oh, well, what? That's a fucking mouthful. Oh. Well, there's gotta be something to click on around here, right? Alright, so I have the character face the wall and point at the door, okay.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Lovecraft hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12 in order to look and feel like an adult, and his correspondence with friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced by his letter to Celia Brown, dated 13 February 1928. As for the matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor and never tend to. Having a strong aesthetic disgust at any with blunts or coarseness the delicate natural equipoise of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Drinking excited by personal repugnance, hence I don't drink, let her do what they will. I'm rather in favor of the prohibition of any antisocial force, as well as any other source of spirit of revision. Lovecraft letters to Celia Brown, read Bishop H.P. Lovecraft, Sean Brownie and Andrew Lehman's St. Josh or Joshi. I'm glad I got rid of the motion blur because I'd begin sick.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed. Worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink, and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Nothing else?
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Let's make sure I have clicked on every password.
It shall not find me. God, that hand!
Oh,
The window! The window!
we jumped out the window. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in a little pool of cosmic horror. We would appreciate it if you took a moment to rate them and check out the other games and DLCs. Yeah, that was interesting. And like I said, if you guys obviously want me to play the DLCs, we gotta hit at least 100 likes and views. Then I'll get them. Because some of you know, I don't have that much money. I only get $105 a month to play with. So, and after paying all my bills and getting what I need for the month, I have like $20 to my name if I'm lucky. But yeah, if you guys liked what you've seen so far, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification icon so you know I'm uploading and streaming and playing more games like this. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.